Find out what's going on. Get involved. Change things from the inside. Make a difference. Take pride. Multicultural at its best. The Luisa Marshall Show. Coming up.
Today, all news simply the best. Get inspired.
Don't let the lies go unchallenged.
Welcome back to our important discussion with former CNN correspondent Maria Ressa on freedom of speech and press under the Duterte administration. Maria and her company, Rappler, are under fire as they continue to appeal the conviction of cyber libel while facing several other criminal charges against them.
My verdict, which will affect every single Filipino. Now, anything you post on Facebook, you can be held liable for up to 12 years.
Maria pretty much says that the conviction against her and Rappler is a warning to all Filipino journalists to be careful on criticizing Duterte's war on drugs and the widespread manipulation of the public by Duterte.
Are Filipinos going to fight for our democracy, or do we want to voluntarily give up our rights? I think that's what we're facing in the Philippines today. That is death by 1,000 cuts.
All these coming up.
I'm a socialist. And I think the Philippines is better off without me.
Why?
Well, magkaiba ang suddenly everything could change.
You said your conviction is death by 1,000 cuts in Philippine democracy. How do you explain this to all our kababayans there in the Philippines and our fellow Filipinos overseas?
It's tough to summarize. That is really the best way. Death by 1,000 cuts. You get a little cut, like a paper cut. It hurts, but it's not going to stop you, right? And now imagine you get gashes all over your body, and these are open wounds. Think about that body as our democracy. So it feels like there are all these gashes and we are bleeding out. And this is the way I would say, given the events that we've lived through, right? I'm not the only person. We're not the only news group that President Duterte has attacked. In fact, I would say that we've done quite well, considering that we've been under attack for 4 years. But we continue to fight back because we're not going to voluntarily give up our rights. The first news group attacked by President Duterte is the Philippine Daily Inquirer. The government filed cases against the owners. Within a few weeks, the owners said they would sell the newspaper. That's still ongoing. The second he attacked is ABS-CBN, the largest broadcaster in the Philippines. Our kababayans there would be able to see it on TFC, the Filipino channel. Well, you may not now because I don't know what their status is, but on May 5th this year, 2020, a day after the franchise expired because Congress really dribbled it, this administration, they were given a cease and desist order, and within a few hours they shut down. Imagine, the last time ABS-CBN was shut down was in 1972 when Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law, and it was shut down for 14 years. We're the third news group that the government has attacked. Maybe because we're small, we're 100 people versus ABS-CBN's 1,000 news group. We're small, we're agile. We're led by people in our 50s who have been through this. I've gone through all of this in many different countries, and I know tactics of intimidation and harassment, and that's what I call it out every step. 1,000 cuts is these kinds of like incremental moves that on their own seem like, oh, that's nothing. And in fact, the narrative on social media is, actually Secretary Panelo has said this, oh, she just wants attention. And I've had groups, I've done a lot of interviews, and I've had groups that are open to the public where someone says, that's just your drama. And my response to it was, let's change places. Let's see what your drama looks like when you're facing 11 cases. And by the way, cumulatively, those 8 arrest warrants, they hold almost 100 years in prison, maximum sentences for all of these, right? So this is not, let me further explain death by 1,000 cuts in the context of the events. Let me take it away from you. What we've seen in the last 4 years are ad hoc moves by the Duterte administration using an obscure point of law called quo warranto to unseat a sitting Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and eliminate her completely from the Supreme Court. This is former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno, using an obscure point of law to take away amnesty that was given by the government way before. This is Senator Trillanes, using the charge of plunder without really having her day in court, and jailing Senator Laila de Lima, who's a former Commission on Human Rights chief, a former Justice Secretary. She was a woman who was investigating Duterte for human rights violations while he was still mayor. Well, she's been in prison since February of 2017, right? There are many more. I can go through a litany, but I think what we're seeing is these ad hoc moves to weaponize the law are now being codified into law. And it starts with my verdict, which will affect every single Filipino. Now, anything you post on Facebook, you can be held liable for up to 12 years. Any Filipino now. And then the second is this very draconian anti-terror bill that is waiting to lapse into law. The only thing it needs was passed quickly through the House of Representatives in about 5 days, right? And then now it's waiting for President Duterte's signature. There was a huge outcry against it because under this bill that will lapse into law this month, anyone that the government feels is a critic or a dissident, a small group of cabinet secretaries under something called the Anti-Terrorism Council can now designate that person a terrorist. And when they do that, you can be arrested without a warrant and held in jail for up to 24 days. We'll see where this goes, right? But this is codifying these death by 1,000 cuts into law. When you do that, this is, according to constitutional experts, this particular bill is a flagrant violation on its prima facie, on its face, of our Constitution. So let's see what happens. Are Filipinos going to fight for our democracy, or do we want to voluntarily give up our rights? I think that's what we're facing in the Philippines today. That is death by 1,000 cuts.
Maria, if you're convicted of all the 8 charges, you're going to be in prison for a long, long time. Are you ready to put away your life in prison, or how can you continue to fight your battle for democracy and freedom of speech if you are being incarcerated? What do you do?
So, governments who use their power against you want you to be afraid. And in fact, I asked President Duterte this in the last interview that I did with him in December of 2016. So in December of 2016, I was one of 4 journalists he granted interviews to. And I think probably it was one of the more philosophical ones, because I wanted to understand the leadership style he has developed. He was mayor on and off of Davao City since 1988. And now he had gotten, the Duterte supporters will always say he was overwhelmingly elected. He wasn't. He was elected with a plurality of 5 candidates. 16 million of 54 million registered voters voted for President Duterte. It was a field of 5. So 16 million, a plurality, determined what our next 6 years was going to become. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Duterte, you have always said that you want to rule with violence and fear. Is this something you will still continue, given that you now have to protect our Constitution? You are now leading the Philippines. Most of the time at that point in every presidency, and Luisa, I've been around a long time. I've covered every single president, not just here in the Philippines, but in Southeast Asia. That was my beat for CNN. Right? So I asked him, most of the time by December of the year you're coming in, you're trying to unite disparate forces of society, because to actually achieve anything meaningful, you need to unite people. And that the problem, though, is that that goes against the leadership style of President Duterte, the same way it goes against the leadership style of President Trump, right? They use a divide and conquer approach, and if anything, it plays right into social media because it's a demonizing thing. It creates an us against them. And I think the greatest us against them that President Duterte unleashed was exploiting the gap between the rich and the poor. We go back to his leadership style. He said, of course, it's part of who I am. Violence and fear. That is the way President Duterte leads. So in this environment, he wants me to feel the fear of prison and never even challenge and voluntarily give up the rights that are guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution of the Philippines. I won't do that because, I think if it was just me, the person, I'm pretty easygoing as a person. And I would say, okay, fine, if it's just me. But it's not just me. It's Rappler. And it's not just Rappler. It's the Philippines, right? And maybe the government didn't realize that Rappler is led by very strong women who revolted against our industry, right? We didn't want to work for anyone because we wanted our independence. That was why we created Rappler. I've been asked a lot whether or not I think I can win. I don't look at it like that because it's like looking up to climb Mount Everest. But this one is like, there's tremendous power. These are my taxes. This is government. No one wants to fight government. But I think the battle is the journey, right? I'm walking a path. I think it's the right path. History will be on my side. History will be on the side of press freedom and the news groups that are trying to hold up the sky. And for every time the Constitution is violated, I want someone to sign their name to it. Because if I can't get justice now, I will get justice later. So the journey, that's it. The battle is the journey. So that's how I deal with it. I can't look at like, I could go to jail for this much. I've made my peace with it. And I did that last year. In fact, on the day that I met George and Amal Clooney, because they really made it very clear to me that day at the launch of Trial Watch, made it clear that I could go to jail for a long time. It took me a few months. It took me 2 months, I think, or a month and a half to really grapple with it, right? And when I went to court on June 15th, the verdict wasn't unexpected because that's the pattern, right? So, yeah. I don't look at it like that. I also think that by taking a position, which is very clear, it's on the side of justice. By taking that position, I hope that Filipinos will realize that this is the time period. And it's not just the Philippines. I think every person in a democracy. Canada is a guiding light in a lot of these now, but because your government has taken positions to defend press freedom. This is the time when it matters. As my generation knew it, democracy is dead. And COVID-19 has, really leveled it. It's exacerbated the problems that were there. It's given more power to governments. So we're standing on the rubble of what used to be. And now this generation must take that and rebuild the democracy that they will live under. It's not a guaranteed right, and if you don't believe it and nurture in it, then you will get the democracy you deserve. And maybe the pendulum is swinging back the other way, and that's enabled by technology, by the social media platforms that distribute the news, that allow people to question the facts, right? So maybe the pendulum is going to swing back and we're going to walk into a decade of fascism globally. This isn't just a Filipino problem. This is a global problem because the world's largest distributor of news is Facebook. It's global in scope. So we are all infected with the same virus.
Yes.
I hate to use that.
Yes, we are.
We really, truly have to create the democracy we want to live in.
We'll be back with Maria Ressa. Don't go away.
I appeal to you, the journalists in this room, the Filipinos who are listening, to protect your rights.
The personal attacks on you, Maria, oh wow, they're ongoing. So do you fear for your life and the rest of the Rappler staff?
Pragmatic. We've increased our security a lot. And, you know, starting in 2016, which was when the online attacks began, we've offered counseling to our people. And then we've increased security, right? That's all I can do. Because in the end, again, there's nothing, that old saying, nothing to fear but fear itself. Because that's what having a Damocles sword hanging over your head does. The kind of hate that I've been bombarded with, the inciting to hate, and they've attacked my gender, my color, even, you know, I have really dry skin, eczema. That's been weaponized against me. And the best part, Nietzsche had this quote, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." That's what happened to me. And that's what happened to Rappler. We're forged in fire. In fact, a few days ago, we just published a story that despite all of the attacks, because we were forced to be agile, to be creative, when you're faced with overwhelming power, we actually came out with a sustainable business model that isn't advertising. And this happened in April of 2018, when almost 50% of our advertising dropped because they were afraid of all the cases that the government was throwing at us. And 2019, we actually made a little bit of money despite all of that. And we did that with the support and the kindness of strangers, because our legal fees are sizable. It's almost a third of our operating expense. And that's almost taken care of by our community. So for me, much as I see the evil of people and the possibilities and the nastiness, both online and in the real world, I keep remembering the goodness of human nature, you know, and that we're fighting this. We're not alone.
So millions of Filipinos called Rappler fake news. And
that's President Duterte, right?
Every day I see this fake news, Rappler, fake news, Maria Ressa, fake news.
Even though I see these attacks and these lies, and I don't presume to know any better than the people who staunchly believe that the Philippines needs a strongman leader, and here's the shocking part, I have never heard Filipinos write or say that it is okay to kill people until 2016, right? That was the defense of the drug war. It's okay to kill. They're drug pushers. You know, of course, the poorest of the poor suffer. So I take this all with a grain of salt. I think we're manipulated until the air clears. And it must start with the technology platform stopping the lies, so that people can then figure out what they believe. This insidious manipulation has to stop, because it is killing democracy, not just in the Philippines, but everywhere around the world.
What is your message to all the Filipino journalists all over the world?
Hold the line. Hold the line, because this time matters. Let's not voluntarily give up our rights. I really wish I could just kind of, go write a book. Look, if we hadn't come under attack the way we did, which was very clear that the government wanted us to be quiet. If we hadn't come under attack, I may no longer be the CEO of Rappler, because I always had, I'd given myself this 5-year period, and that ended 2016, which was when we did actually have positive EBITDA. Rappler was a startup, right? So I had to stay, because when you come under attack, it matters. So the question I think every person, every Filipino, every Canadian should be asking is, what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? Because that's where we are today. It demands something more of us. What are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? I answered that question. When you asked me whether I was afraid, I answered that question by just answering that. What am I willing to sacrifice for the truth? Journalists are activists in the battle for truth. Don't let the lies go unchallenged.
What is the future of independent journalism under the Duterte administration?
Stay tuned. You know, we're still fighting it now. So let's see. Here's Rappler, right?
If you have another opportunity to ask one question to President Duterte, what will it be?
I'm shocked by the destruction. You know, there are many questions I would ask, but I would go back to his fundamental beliefs. And this is what the coronavirus did. What we've seen now is a government that is consolidating power. But the coronavirus actually demands a government work efficiently. And it demands that the government unite all the different sectors of society, because that's the only way you can fight this public health crisis. Of course, the problem is that President Duterte, because he trusts the military, the reason why, and I asked him this, the reason why he trusts the military is they follow the chain of command. So who's leading our battle against the coronavirus? Retired military generals, they're in charge. So we saw something in Cebu. There was a spike last week, and over the weekend, we saw video of people in choppers dropping pamphlets about COVID-19 and face masks. This is not a virus. Is a virus. Troops in camouflage are not going to do anything to help that, right? So I think the first is, my God, that's a long-winded answer to your question, right? I guess part of it is what I see versus the way power sees it. Because President Duterte, it isn't him alone now. He's surrounded by a whole group of people whose vested interests are there to retain and consolidate their power. We're 2 years before the next elections, and people do not want to lose this power, right? So that's what we're seeing. I don't think it's just President Duterte. And the question really should be, what do you want your legacy to be? The ICC coming down and coming at you for the killings of tens of thousands, the killings of people during COVID-19, because in the time of the virus, lies kill. And we've seen government officials prescribing supposed cures for COVID-19. Rappler won this most bizarre fact check award at this year's Global Fact Check. And the fact check was a doctor, in quotes, saying that semen is a cure for COVID-19. The most bizarre fact check. Thank you, Philippines. It's a long answer to tell you that what is happening today will take a generation to fix. And I don't think at least the man I had interviewed the first time I interviewed him again after many, many years was in 2015, October 2015, before he announced he was running for presidency. And when I saw him, he remembered when I was still with CNN, which was the last time I interviewed him in the late 80s. He remembered it. So the man I interviewed wanted to make a better Philippines. I do believe that. It's just he only has one tool, a hammer. And so everything looks like a nail. And that's what I see. The administration hits everything. And these are extremely nuanced, difficult, wicked problems. So you need a bit more sophistication. And if loyalty is the way you appoint people, then we are not tapping the best of Filipinos and the best of what the Philippines offers. I guess that's the question, right? For a man who wanted to make things better.
Maria, it has been so enlightening to speak to you, and you're very inspirational. I know that I'll probably be rocking the boat forever with this interview. I don't care. I really don't care. So I want you to take care.
Come with a troll army to attack. So please be prepared. They attack me and whoever interviews me. So Luisa.
Oh my gosh!
It's so sad. Right?
I've been there. I've been there, Maria. I don't know if your assistant told you, but I've been there, done that, but not as massive as what you are experiencing right now. And that's why I really feel for you. But you are strong. I can see you have that power in your mind that you have to keep on going. And I just love the inspiration. So, how do you inspire other journalists? In one sentence, how do you inspire the journalists of the world?
It's huge. What we do today matters. We need to build from the rubble of the past. So, journalists are at the front line in the battle for facts. We need to make sure that facts survive so that democracy survives.
Maria, we love you. You're always welcome to my show. Thank you so much. I hope that you take care of your staff, your family, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
Maria. All the best.
Thanks, Luisa. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoy the show. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Please don't drink and drive. Don't text and drive. Always be kind. Let's stop bullies and the coronavirus. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Stay safe. See you next week. Bye-bye.